So how do you and I generally get over a hangover? Eat well, drink lots of fluids. How does Penn State get over a hangover? Go and beat down a lowly Indiana team the week after getting beat by Ohio State. Once again, Tim Aiden, Marty Leap from BlackShoeDiaries.com here to break down today's wonderful win over Indiana. Much needed win. Um, Marty, we talked about before we hit record, but I think the battle in the trenches was where this game was won. As Penn State, obviously the D line just feasted on that offensive line of Indiana's, got 6 sacks in the first half, and then more impressively, the offensive line, despite missing 3 starters, and then Hunter Norzad goes down early, and despite that, Katron Allen and Nick Singleton had themselves a day on the ground.
Yeah, I mean, this was the most impressive outing from a Penn State offensive line in quite a while. When you consider, to me at least, because of what you consider everything that's going on today. Is it the best they've played this year? No, but when you have, like you said, you're down 3 starters, including your first round potential tackle 1 in Olufashanu, and you start a true freshman at left tackle, and on the first play of the game, Hunter Norzad, who's played a lot of football for you this year, leaves with injury. And you throw JB Nelson in there, JB Nelson is not technically a true freshman because of being a JUCO kid. This is still his first year playing Power 5 football, and you never would have known that was the case. So the left side of your offensive line, which was a true freshman and a JUCO transfer in his first year of Power 5 football, not only held up, a lot of times that's where Penn State was running the ball, and they ran the ball with a lot of success today. To the tune of 179 yards rushing, and that includes sack yardage. So you take out sack yardage, and that they were close to 200 yards rushing behind a mass unit of an offensive line, and that goes to speak volumes both about Phil Troutwine's ability to develop these offensive linemen this year, as well as the ability to recruit depth and talent along the offensive line in recent years, which something that's plagued Penn State for so long. So it definitely seemed we're finally seeing that offensive line take a turn for the positive. They've played really well this year, but to come out and play this well, and yes, I know it was Indiana, but for any team to be down to their third string in some spots on the offensive line and play this well against the Power 5 defensive line is still extremely impressive.
No doubt. And I mean, Phil Troutwine's kind of been a punching bag these last couple of years for fans because of subpar O-line play. But, to have to throw in, I believe it was Drew Shelton who saw action when Hunter Norzad went down. Or correct me if I'm wrong on that. But to have to throw...
Shelton started a left tackle. When Norzad went down play 1, it was JB Nelson, the JUCO transfer.
It was Nelson, okay.
Yeah. Now, Norzad would eventually return to the game, but it was only after starting right guard Salim Wormley, who's played almost every single snap for Penn State this year, had to leave with injury. So it's not like it's very clear that they were trying to avoid putting Norzad back into the game. So again, just extremely impressive day for this offensive line.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, to have to be able to shuffle guys like that, and yet you're still getting serious push in the run game when, Penn State, they went in with a plan to try to, jam it down Indiana's throats. And it's essentially what happened. They may not have, neither Katron Allen or Nick Singleton may have busted off a huge gain. I mean, the longest for Katron was 12 and Singleton had a 15-yard run, but they just consistently kept hitting singles and doubles. And, between the 2 of them, they had 4 touchdowns combined, 3 of them coming from Katron Allen. And so it was just an impressive day for the running backs, really. And on the other hand, at quarterback, obviously Sean Clifford got the start, maybe much to some fans' dismay. Wasn't a terrible outing. Not his best outing either. 15-23, 229 yards and an interception early on. But he did have some nice throws to Mitchell Tinsley, especially, who made a couple wonderful catches, and frankly should have had a touchdown pass to Theo Johnson, who I don't know how he didn't haul that in. Like maybe he thought it was a little too wide open and just the shock of it caused him to drop it. But I don't know. But Field did make up for it later on with a touchdown catch, but that was a little baffling. But anyway, Cliff plays for about 2.5 quarters, and then finally Drew Aller comes in midway for the third quarter, and he sure did not disappoint, Marty. 9 to 12, 75 yards, 2 touchdowns, and just threw an absolute bullet on his first touchdown pass to thread the needle and get a touchdown pass. So, Marty, how I guess describe. Obviously, you've been the one in the Slack channel screaming the most for Drew Aller. Of course, the rest of us have followed suit as well, but you've been screaming this from day one. How did it feel for you to see him come in and do what he did?
It was nice, and it's not even a I want to see Drew Aller, so it's nice to see him do well thing. It's Dan Orlovsky talked about this a lot on the broadcast today. What has held Penn State back more than anything else in the James Franklin era? That elite, next level, first round pick type of quarterback. And since he was in high school, a lot of people believe Drew Aller could be that quarterback. And today he looked like that quarterback. That touchdown throw to Trey Wallace, and this is not hyperbole whatsoever to say this, there are a lot of NFL quarterbacks who could not make that throw. There was no window there. He made the window with the throw. I'm Trey Wallace's hands probably still hurt from bringing that one in, especially in colder conditions. But it was just extremely impressive. And what impressed me most from Aller, it wasn't necessarily the throws because we know the physical tools are there. It was the other aspects of the game. Pre-snap checks, shifting his coverage for his offensive linemen, being able to read the defense. It was like a second or third play where it was a 3rd and 5 and he saw the hole and he just tucked it, hit it, got it 6 yards, got the first down and moved the sticks. His ability to dissect the defense, his pocket presence, his internal clock. There was a throw he made where it was as soon as the receiver broke, the ball was there waiting for them. That's the kind of stuff you don't see a lot from true freshmen, to have that kind of timing, have that internal clock, have that pocket presence down already. And I think that's what was most impressive to me, because that's the kind of stuff that can be the hardest to learn. I mean, look at Sean Clifford. Those are the things that have held him back the most in his career. And a lot of times either you have the ability to do it or you don't. So to see that already from Drew as a true freshman is extremely encouraging for what's to come in 2023 and beyond. This is more to an extent off-season talk than now, but if you look at Penn, just look at this game today. All of their touchdowns were accounted for in some fashion by true freshmen. Denied Dennis Sutton's making plays with that interception. Abdul Carter all over the field again. There's so many young players on this team. The majority of this team is going to be back next year. So if you add Drew Aller to the mix of quarterback, and he is what we think he is, it could prove to be, a really, really special season in Happy Valley next year. And Aller's a big part of that. And that's why it was so exciting. That's why it was so much fun to watch him play essentially the entire second half against a Power 5 defense. And again, with Indiana, I understand it's Indiana, but Tom Allen's one of the better defensive minds in the Big Ten. It's not going to be hard for Tom Allen defense to confuse a true freshman quarterback. And Aller looked great. It's just, it's nice to kind of get that taste of what could be coming in the future for Penn State, because this is no knock on Trace McSorley at all. In my opinion, he's the best quarterback in program history. But that is what has held James Franklin back, is not having that elite NFL caliber quarterback. And it looks like he's finally got it.
Probably not since Kerry Collins could you say they've had an elite NFL caliber quarterback. I guess sticking with topic of Drew Aller, going forward these next 3 games, you got Maryland next week at home, and then on the road at Rutgers. Then he played Michigan State at home in the regular season finale. How do you see, or at least what do you hope to see with regards to the playing time that Drew gets these next few games?
I mean, I would love to see him start. That's not going to happen. Um, when Sean Clifford was pulled today, Dan Orlovsky again made a really good point on the broadcast. Sean Clifford is 16 yards away from becoming Penn State's all-time leading passer. I'm sure. I mean, Aller obviously with the state of the game was going to play a lot of the second half regardless, but I'm sure Franklin's decision to get him out of there when he did had something to do with that. Trying to give Cliff the opportunity to break that record at home next week at Beaver Stadium. I would just continue to say, I mean, I've said it all year and we haven't really seen it, but I just hope that, especially with Aller playing well when he's out there, we see a short leash on Sean Clifford. If Sean Clifford struggles, James Franklin's not afraid to go get him. I mean, against Rutgers and Michigan State, I don't think it's going to matter at all because those two teams they stink. Even though Michigan State beat Illinois today, that's still not a good football team. And the Maryland game, though, that's one. If Talia Tagovailoa is healthy, you're probably going to need some points to win that game. So if Clifford's out there kind of him hawing around, I would hope we see a switch made. But I mean, I think today, if you're Penn State, you hope every game goes similar to the way today's did, which is not out of the question with who you have left. You can get a big lead early in the third quarter and get Clifford out of there and let Drew get a lot of run in the second half. Because make no mistake about it, these reps are going to be just invaluable for Drew Aller for next year, especially when, you look at the season opener and West Virginia's not a great team, but you're still start to hear the Power 5 non-conference opponent. So you want your quarterback, as talented as he is, going into what will most likely be his first career start, having as much game experience as possible.
I will say regarding Maryland and Talia had probably his worst outing as a starting quarterback. Only had 77 yards passing, and 42 of those came on the last drive of the game for Maryland, which they did finally reach the end zone, but still 23-10 loss, in which the final score does not represent what a one-sided game it was. And
that's why I threw the if Maryland is healthy comment out there, because that team.
Well, I'm not sure if Talia is 100.
I don't think he's healthy at all. I mean, obviously this is discussion for later in the show when we start looking towards next week. But yeah, I don't think Talia is healthy at all.
Yeah, we can. We'll do a little Maryland preview towards the end of the show. But yeah, I don't think he's 100%. Going back to the Indiana game, we talk about the offense, but defensively, I mean, my God, what a game it was. I mentioned at the beginning of the show, 6 sacks from the defense, and that was in the first half alone. They didn't get any in the second half, but it's not like at that point they were up by 17 points and the game was essentially in hand. Just with how ineffective Indiana's offense was, especially once their starter, Jack Tuttle, got knocked out towards the end of the first half. And then they were forced to play a third-string true freshman, Nick Sorsby, who just had absolute deer in the headlights look on him, like had like kind of the whole please don't kill me face on him when the pass rush was coming after him. I mean, I remember he threw like he just kind of threw like a duck, just like he saw the rush coming to him, just threw it into a random spot just to avoid getting hit real badly. And he did eventually get replaced by Dexter Williams, who definitely looked a lot better compared to Sorsby. He was at least able to move the offense a little bit. But this is kind of what it goes back to. Just the defense just dominated the trenches. I mean, from the beginning, they were just swallowing that Indiana offensive line. I mean, that running game, which was bad to begin with, but they'd never had a chance. And the only chance they had was Jack Tuttle airing it out. And, to his credit, he did have one drive early on for a touchdown, which tied the game. And then he had another chance shortly after that. Sean Clifford has a tipped interception. But, man, the defense really stepped up after giving up that touchdown drive and sacked Tuttle a couple times to get Indiana out of field goal range. Because they picked them off, I believe, inside Penn State's 30. So they were in prime position to at least tack on a field goal and take the lead briefly. But they couldn't even do that. And that, to me, that kind of seemed like a bit of a turning point in momentum, because if Indiana couldn't take advantage there and with Penn State's D-line still continuing to dominate, I mean, how many more chances are we going to get to really like put a scare into Penn State. It was a good sight to see though, and that's what you want to see out of a team who on paper should be finishing with 10 wins on the season. That's you want to go see them dominate just a bad Indiana team. Let's be frank. This is a bad Indiana team, and you should be handling them this way. But Marty, what did you? Were there anything else you saw in the defense that really impressed you, and or maybe that you're looking forward to these next few games?
I agree with what you said about the defense. It was a really good performance. I mean, they had that one bad drive, and outside of that, just the defensive line played by far their best game of the year, in my opinion. I mean, they mauled Indiana. That quarterback, man, I felt bad for him because I mean, I think the big reason he had the deer in the headlight looks was he didn't have a chance. I remember his very first play. Kazai Izzard just ate him alive, and you could see it. You knew he wasn't going to be long for the game.
I actually felt sympathy
Oh,
towards
I
him.
did too. And I was honestly happy to see Tom Allen get the poor kid out of there before.
Yeah, I'm like, man, I don't want this guy getting killed or something.
Yeah, like just having his football career ruined, like the David Carr syndrome where you just get mauled and you're never the same quarterback again. But it was great to see with that. I mean, the defensive line has not been bad this year by any means outside of the Michigan game, but you haven't seen a lot of the just the sacks getting home and things like that you wanted to see. And it was there today. You mentioned that series after the Clifford interception. It was a Kobe King tackle for a loss, a sack by Deez Isaac, and a sack by Jair Brown. So obviously that's not all the defensive linemen making a play there, but still, that was huge. Penn State's defense finished the day 3 interceptions, 16 tackles for a loss. Yes, 16 and 6 sacks. And if their starters would have played deeper in this game, they easily could have pushed 20 tackles for a loss and 10 sacks if they wanted to. So it was good to see. Denied Dennis Sutton continuing to progress well. I mean, the interception, obviously, good play by him to reel the ball in. I mean, I thought it was kind of funny because you could tell he's a guy who doesn't touch the ball often because once he got it, kind of had that like, oh crap, what do I do now feel to it. But there was a play in the fourth quarter where Indiana ran away from him and he ran the running back down from behind and drug him down short of a first down. You just continue to see Dennis Sutton progress every week and show why he was a 5-star recruit. This was probably the healthiest, most explosive Deez Isaac has looked all year. I think coming into the year, people, myself included, had high expectations for him, while forgetting how difficult it is to come back from an Achilles injury. But it's encouraging to see him show that today because, if he can finish the season strong, gives him something to build on going into next year. So it was a very encouraging day for the defensive line and, for the defense as a whole. And one of the guys I want to mention, Kobe King, I thought played the best game of his young career today, the true sophomore middle linebacker. Tyler Elsdon was in and out of the game of injury, so King had to play a lot of Mike. And when he was out there, I mean, I can vividly remember 2 or 3 plays, him in the backfield blowing things up. I don't remember him ever doing anything where he was, getting burnt in coverage, guys running past him, anything of the nature. So tip of the cap to Kobe King, who played a tremendous game today too, with having to play some extended reps of Mike linebacker with Tyler Elsdon battling some sort of injury.
Absolutely. And I was looking up, this is the biggest, probably the most lopsided game that Penn State, Indiana have ever played in Bloomington. And this is normally they give them a very difficult time. And, of course they've even beaten them twice, previous time being that, Michael Penix coming up short of the pylon. And, but then I was looking at Winspedia here at the series history between Penn State and Indiana, and this was the biggest beatdown Penn State delivered at Indiana since 2002 when they won 58-25. And I looked up this game, and I do remember watching it. I was a freshman at Penn State back then, but I remember Larry Johnson just went off, and he 327 yards on 28 carries. And I remember Indiana, they put up some points, and I think they led at moments in the first half, but every time they score, Larry Johnson would just respond with a huge touchdown run. I mean, he was just unstoppable in that game. But not since that game had Penn State just thoroughly destroyed Indiana on their home turf. And frankly, I'd say this, even though the final score, the margin was less than that 2002 game, this was hands down the most thorough beating Penn State's ever delivered the Hoosiers in Bloomington.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, you look at even in 2016 when Penn State won the Big Ten last and Indiana was a sub 500 team, they only won by 14, and that included within the final minute or so. I remember there was a fumble that Torrance Brown ran back for a touchdown. So that was a one-score game in the final minute of the game. Just like you said, Bloomington has been a bit of a house of horrors for Penn State over the years. And I remember early in this game, even before the game, I was talking in Slack. It's like, man, week after Ohio State, the weather sucks. Your offensive line's banged up. This has got 17-13 slop fest written all over it. And to Penn State's credit, that's not what happened.
That fear was in the back of my mind too, Marty. So
yeah, especially when Indiana scored and then Clifford threw that interception. I'm just like, oh boy, I'm like, at no point, I'm like, they're gonna win, but it's not gonna be fun. This is not gonna be one of those fun games.
No.
You're gonna be like, all right, thank God it's over. They won. Let's move on to next week. But one other point I'm bringing up, you and I touched on this off air before we came on. This is season 9 for James Franklin. Through the first 8, he was 2-6 against the spread the week following Ohio State. And to his credit, that wasn't a factor today. It's funny. My dad was at my house earlier, and we are watching a little bit of that Ohio State Northwestern slop fest. And he and I were talking how it seems every year Penn State and Ohio State both come out extremely sluggish the week after they play each other, which, I mean, makes sense. That's always one of the biggest games of the year in the Big Ten, maybe the biggest game of the year in the Big Ten outside of this year and last year's game.
Takes a lot out of both teams.
Yeah, and you know, it's physically draining, it's mentally draining. Typically, like last week's game, they're ones that don't get decided until the final minutes. So you can understand why both teams would be a bit hungover the following week. And well, Ohio State most certainly had that issue today. Credit to Penn State, they did, and they came out, and after that interception, when the defense made that stand, they just put their foot on the throat and never backed off and just throttled Indiana.
Absolutely. And that's it was definitely a refreshing sight to see it. This is the second time now that Penn State, the week following a loss, they've just come out and throttled their opponent the following week, which, I mean, I don't have the stats pulled up, but I'm trying to remember the last time that happened in a season under James Franklin.
Yeah, I'm trying to think because, I mean, 2020, obviously nothing went right. Last year, once they started losing, nothing went right. 2019, you lose to Minnesota, came out the next week, and him hot around with Indiana. 17 and 18, you had the back-to-back loss. Yeah, I mean, it might be because even 2016, they lose to Pitt, came out the next week against, I think, Temple was, and it was just like a 28-12.
A close game.
Yeah, and then when they lost to Michigan that year, they needed overtime the following week to beat Minnesota. So yeah, it's been a long time since we've seen Penn State come back the week after a loss with just throttling an opponent. We've seen it twice now this year, and both times were against Big Ten opponents, which just adds to the impressiveness of it. So, yeah, kudos to them. I mean, that's when this season's all said and done, I think some people are going to be disappointed simply because, once again, you lost to both Ohio State and Michigan. But there's definitely
those anyway that began on our preseason show. It's not
exactly. Coming into the year, most people were saying 8-4, 9-3. Right now, this team's barring something going wrong, they're going to go 10-2. And even at that, outside of that, you can see steps being made. You see the team bouncing back from losses much better than in years past. The offensive line, most of which is back next year, looks like it has finally turned a corner. Like there's still a ton of positives that have come out of the season.
Oh, no doubt. I think, like I said, when we look back on this season, maybe we'll look at this as this is kind of like the year where we saw promise from all of these true freshmen. Obviously the running backs, Singleton and Allen. Especially on the defensive side, you had Abdul Carter and Dennis Sutton. Chop Robinson, even though he's a transfer, I mean, he's still got another year at least, so he'll promise. And then you got you just like what you see and knowing what's coming back next year. Obviously, there's a couple guys we're not certain about, like Parker Washington. He's probably on the fence with him as far as will he go pro or not. I personally hope he comes back for one more year and has Drew Hour throwing to him all year, which maybe could boost his draft stock even higher than what it might be right now. So we'll see. But I really like what I've seen from the youngsters this year. And I think, if 2023 or 2024, they break through, win the Big Ten, make the playoff, I think you're going to look back on this season as the year where the foundation was set for those big runs to happen.
Yeah, I totally agree. A comparison I'll make, it's anyone else out there who listens to us who has the misfortune of being a Pittsburgh Pirates fan like I do. Look at 2012 when the team came up short, kind of faltered down the end of September, didn't make the postseason, but you could see the building blocks there. And that's, they ripped off 3 straight postseason runs after that. And I think this could be a very similar type deal for Penn State, where the team's not going to reach their ultimate goals this year, but you see the building blocks there. You can see the reasons for excitement. And another point Orlovsky made during the telecast today. Recruiting matters, no matter what people want to say or think. Recruiting matters, and you're seeing that now. James Franklin, that the recruiting class they signed last year, that in the 2018 class were pretty similar. Both were definitely the strongest he's ever signed. I've always said I felt last year's class I give a slight edge to, because no knock on the guy. The 2018 class, you had Will Levis as your quarterback, and I don't care what NFL draft projections say about him. This past class, you had Drew Aller. It's a no-brainer which one of those you're going to take. And we're seeing it already. Allen, Singleton, Omari Evans has contributed a lot more than anyone expected this year. Drew Shelton today. We're seeing it with Aller on defense. Abdul Carter. Very quietly, KJ Winston has burned his red shirt at safety. Cam Miller, very quietly, has burned his red shirt at cornerback. Zane Durant, denied Dennis Sutton. You're seeing where recruiting matters. So I don't think it's a coincidence that Penn State just signed the best class it's ever signed under James Franklin, and we've seen them burn more red shirts than any other year under James Franklin. And they also appear to be on their way to a 10-win season, thanks in large part to the contributions of a lot of those freshmen. That's definitely not a coincidence. And again, just goes to show recruiting does indeed matter. And when you recruit this well, you're going to win a lot more football games than if you're a program that tries to bank solely on development.
Indeed. Before we transition to talking about next week's opponent, just friendly reminder, WatchDaries.com. It's where we get your coverage of all things Penn State football and Penn State sports in general. Marty, you're going to have your Twitter reactions post up tonight. I will have my position grades up tomorrow sometime, and Monday I'll also have my turning point segment, which I describe a moment in the game where it felt like the momentum shifted permanently in one team's favor, in this case, Penn State's. And, obviously the basketball season starts Monday. They tip off against Winthrop, so we'll be diving headfirst into basketball coverage starting this coming week. Wrestling about to get started, I believe, so we got some wrestling writers covering that. So not just a football site, stick around, check us out for your winter sports coverage. Our Twitter handle is also there, both Marty and I, but also our website, Black Diaries. You can see it there. And also tonight, 11:30 Eastern time, Mark Rogers himself on main Voice of College Football channel will have his live call-in show. So maybe get a happy Marty calling in and raving about that run game today. And also, as a reminder, if you like what you see here and you haven't already, please hit like and subscribe on the Penn State Voice of College Football channel. Trying to grow that channel, 551 subscribers so far. So thank all of you who've helped us reach that number. Let's see if we can, get that to 600 by the end of November. So we help us out on that one, folks. Marty, so turning ahead to, you got Maryland coming in next week to Happy Valley. And in my opinion, this is probably the toughest remaining opponent on the schedule because of who they bring in at quarterback and Tua Tagovailoa. And also, I always talk about how Penn State gets up to play Ohio State every year. Well, it's the same story with Maryland when they play Penn State. You can expect them to bring a little extra swagger and try to prove themselves against you.
Yeah, this is a game that means a lot to Maryland. It always has. You know, I know Maryland fans, and I'm sure, Tim, you know this better than I do living in Maryland, but a lot of Maryland fans have a lot of disdain for Penn State, largely because for so many years, Penn State has recruited the state of Maryland extremely well, has taken a lot of players that Maryland wanted. I feel like a lot of it goes back to the Derek Williams recruitment way back in the day. And then there's also a lot of dislike for Maryland fans for James Franklin, which I've never really understood. A quick rundown of the backstory. When Ralph Friedgen was there and James Franklin was his offensive coordinator, James Franklin was dubbed as the head coach in waiting, and it didn't work out because Maryland fired James Franklin. He went to Vanderbilt and, took that program to incredible heights, and now is doing it at Penn State. So
you mean fired Ralph Friedgen?
Oh yeah, they fired Friedgen, so the whole coaching staff went. And it's not like Franklin, turned his back on Maryland and left them hanging when he's supposed to be the head coach in waiting or something. So I don't know. I've never understood it, but yeah, and James Franklin tends to always get up for this one. Also, usually Franklin is a guy who will take his foot off the pedal, but the couple times he's had the chance to throttle Maryland, he has not taken his foot off the pedal. I think of those two,
a couple of those games,
especially that blackout game that Friday night when Maryland canceled class and it's supposed to be the biggest game in Maryland history. And what was it, 52-0,
59-0,
59, and it came 2 years after they beat him 66-3 in College Park.
I was at both of those, so
yeah, and I think a lot of it too goes back to that first year in 2014 when Randy Edsall didn't have his players shake hands at midfield, and I think that's one that's kind of always sat in James's crawl. So, yeah, but I agree, it's going to be the most challenging opponent left. Penn State much more talented top to bottom than Maryland. I think this is a game where Penn State holds the advantage at pretty much every position except maybe quarterback if Talia Tagovailoa is healthy. But that's a big if. I mean, you and I both watched that game today against Wisconsin, at least pieces of it, and he doesn't look like himself. I think there was some scuttlebutt when he first got hurt about a potential slight tear in his knee of some sort. So we'll see. Maryland, if Talia is healthy and Penn State, isn't up to par in defense, that's definitely an offense that can hang some points on you. But I think, again, one thing that helps Penn State here too is if Maryland's offense is going to be successful is because they're throwing the ball, I'll take my chances with this secondary. Raheem Jarrett versus Joey Porter Jr. should be a pretty fun battle next week. That's one you're going to see a lot of in the NFL for years to come. So that should be a fun battle. But I think the big thing to me is kind of similar to this week. Maryland's offensive line, I'm not sure is going to be able to block Penn State's defensive line consistently enough anyhow. Penn State can't come out and play poorly and beat Maryland, but it's a game where as long as Penn State doesn't come out and beat themselves, they should be okay and be able to take care of business against the Terps.
And I would say, I think I'd be looking my chops at this stat line here, but Wisconsin had two guys go over 100 yards rushing today, Braylon Allen and Isaac Arendo. So there's definitely some opportunity there for Katron and Nick to feast next week, just like they did today. I was talking to a friend of mine from the Solid Verbal Discord who's a big Maryland fan, and he was telling me some of the defensive guys are hurt too. So I could explain why they've some defensively.
And real quick, speaking of the word chop, I'm sure this is a game where Chop Robinson is going to be looking to make an impact. When he left Maryland, it certainly didn't seem like it was on the best of terms. It didn't seem like he was very happy with Mike Locksley and that coaching staff and how they were using him and developing him. And this year, Chop Robinson has been undoubtedly Penn State's best defensive end and best pass rusher. So, it makes you think Maryland was doing something wrong there. So I'm sure this will be one where Chop will be looking to go out and knock some heads around.
I'll say if maybe Chop has the best game of the season next week, it wouldn't shock me at all. I'm sure he's in his mind, he's had that game circled all year.
Yes.
So it'd be an interesting one to see. And yeah, keep an eye out for Talia. If he's his stat line doesn't look like a guy who's 100%. I mean, no way he should be playing that poor. Even though the weather was terrible, but still, he should definitely be doing better than 10 of 23 for 77 yards.
And even the eye test watching him play, he doesn't look like himself. I mean, when Talia Tagovailoa is healthy, he's one of the best quarterbacks in the Big Ten. He could have a very good career in the NFL, but he just, even eye testing it, he does not look himself right now. And again, that could be where a Chop Robinson, a denied Dennis Sutton, and Adiza Isaac, whoever it is, if you can get in there, knock him around early, and get him uncomfortable in that pocket, that could go a long way towards stymieing this Maryland offense next Saturday.
Yeah, I'm hopeful Penn State can once again win in the trenches, and obviously this is a better opponent than Indiana, so they won't put it away, probably won't put it away at halftime, but I think they can kind of grind them down, and maybe by late third quarter or early in the fourth quarter they could start pulling away on this team, as long as they don't shoot themselves in the foot with turnovers. And hopefully it's a game where, again, I hope to see Drew Allar get a lot of run. I think with how he did today against Indiana, I think you're going to see more of him next week as well, kind of regardless how Cliff does. But obviously, yeah, Cliff's going to start. He's going to get his record. Just needs to basically complete a pass or two to get that record.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Clifford will start, get a chance to break the record, but I agree. I'm hopeful that we see, no matter how the game goes, we get to see some of Drew. I definitely would like to see him, no matter how it's going, getting some reps with the first team offense. So it's again, it's a game they should be able to handle. Like you said, I could very much see a scenario like you said. It's third quarter, 24-20, 21-17, something like that. And then Penn State outscores them like 17-7 the rest of the way and comfortably win it by 12-14 or so. But yeah, if you win that one and don't go 10-2, there's definitely gonna be a lot of questions to ask, because I mean Rutgers and Michigan State are just not good at all.
Despite what Michigan State did today.
Yeah, despite what Michigan State did today, that was, I mean, I watched the tail end of that game. Whenever I saw that Michigan State had screwed up enough to somehow give Illinois a chance in the final minute.
They missed a chip shot field goal.
Yeah, and Mel Tucker made some boneheaded decisions apparently with timeout usage and stuff. But I flipped over to watch that last minute, and Illinois just about did the thing and almost marched all the way down and scored on them. But yeah, outside, I didn't really watch it, but I'm sure that that victory had a lot more to do with Illinois playing poorly than it did what Michigan State did.
Probably. Well, I guess on the plus side, we're not going to hear any more Illinois New Year's Six Bowl talk. It's just
Yeah, I did say that on Twitter. Said Illinois losing was good for Penn State in the New Year's Six, because I mean at this point, if Penn State wins out, you can pretty much shoe them in, because you got to think Ohio State, Michigan. The winner of that game goes to the playoff, and the loser goes to the Rose Bowl, which leaves Penn State there for either an Orange Bowl or Cotton Bowl bid. Which, with them being ahead of Illinois in the first college football playoff ranking, I think they would have gotten it over the Illini anyhow. I think that was the committee sending a statement of, hey, Penn State playing in the Big Ten East, going to Auburn and winning, getting a crossover victory on the road against a solid Purdue team. They value all that much more than anything Illinois had done. And Illinois at this point, you got to keep in mind that somehow they've lost to Michigan State and the same Indiana team that we just saw Penn State wipe the floor with for 4 quarters. So I think that would have been safe regardless, but this Illinois losing today should pretty much guarantee Penn State New Year's Six berth as long as they win these next 3 games. And Kansas State losing right now to Texas helps the cause also.
Although I will say, Marty, about Purdue, they got waxed at home 24-3 by Iowa, of all teams. And get this, Iowa scored not 1, not 2, but 3 offensive touchdowns. Wouldn't have thunk it.
Yeah, it's funny to me with Iowa, because it's like you look at Iowa and as many jokes that have been made about them and everything this year, somehow, some way they're going to manage to go 8-4 and win a bowl game and go 9-4. because that's Iowa. That's what they do. They find a way. And I think they're gonna find a way again this year.
Unfortunately, it drops Purdue to 5-4. And the thing is, I'm looking at the stat line. Aiden O'Connell played. I don't know. Maybe he's
I know
not.
he's been hurt.
Maybe he's hurt and his effect because look at his stat line, not good. 168 yards, 2 interceptions, and let's see, Charlie Jones. Oh, yeah, Chuck Sizzle had 104 yards catching, but doesn't matter when you only put up 3 points. And I would bet I think the Iowa defense probably came out playing with a bigger chip on their shoulder, going up against their old teammate, and just hearing all the chatter of how he's lighting up at Purdue now. He's not being held. He's not being handcuffed by Brian Ferentz calling the shots at Iowa. So it's kind of ironic to see that. But yeah, that kind of hurts the strength of schedule a bit for Penn State with the whole crossover thing. So hate to see that. But let's see, Purdue, they go out to Illinois next week at an angry Illinois team. But they do at Northwestern at home and then at Indiana, rivalry game. But yeah, it looks like maybe though they're probably going to end up like a 7-win team, which I was hopeful they could do a little better than that. Maybe win 9 games, go to represent the Big Ten West in the conference championship game, but that doesn't seem likely to happen now. But regardless, that was still a good opening season win. I mean, on the road. I don't care.
And I also feel like too, that's a game where if they replayed that right now, I think Penn State would probably, I'm not saying it'd blow Purdue out or anything, but I don't think it would take a final minute touchdown pass to Kevon Lee to win it either. I think Penn State is Purdue's kind of plateaued out since then, partially due to injuries, but I think Penn State has improved substantially since then, especially in the offensive line. So
yeah, Penn State seems to be hitting their stride at the right time. And so it's going to be, I think it's going to be interesting to see how they handle these next 3 opponents. Like I said, I think their toughest test remaining in the regular season is coming up next weekend with Maryland, just because of who they have at quarterback. Now, again, it depends on how healthy he is, but I just don't see how Rutgers or even Michigan State really gives them as much of a scare. Well, maybe I shouldn't speak too soon about Sparty.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately with Sparty, it's like we have seen some pretty crappy Sparty teams find ways to beat some pretty good Penn State teams. It's just for whatever reason that they've always kind of been a bugaboo for James Franklin.
Yeah, maybe Sparty might be the biggest remaining test just because they've managed to beat Penn State in years where they had no business doing so. So, and even actually, I remember in 2016 when Penn State had clinched the Big Ten East. That first half against Michigan State was
ugly.
But I mean, thankfully the defense did hold them to field goals, so it was like 12-10 at the half.
Yeah, they were losing at halftime, weren't they?
I mean, they were, but it was 12. And the thing is, they kept them out of the end zone though on each of their promising. Like if they finished like half of those drives in the end zone, I mean, it's a different game. I mean, we're flooding it out for 4 quarters in all likelihood.
And I think one thing too to watch that Sparty game at the end of the year. Right now, Michigan State is 4-5. They play Rutgers and Indiana the next 2 weeks, so there's a real possibility Michigan State is 6-5 going into that game. But if Michigan State goes into that game at 5-6, needing it for bowl eligibility, obviously that adds a whole other wrinkle to that game and adds even more motivation for the Spartans to come in. I mean, I don't know what more motivation anyone could ever need than the just beautiful, majestic land-grant trophy. But if they wouldn't need any extra motivation, if they're 5-6 going into that, you're going to give Michigan State's best shot as they look to extend their season.
Yeah, and I actually, in the back of my mind today, I guess before today's game, I was thinking, well, okay, they'll probably lose to Illinois, but then they should beat Indiana, Rutgers at home next 2 weeks. So then they're coming into Happy Valley at 5-6, needing to pull off the upset for bowl eligibility. So the concern is they come in with a little extra motivation. But if they take care of business these next 2 weeks, now they'll already have clinched a bowl game. So they'll still
might be for the best for Penn State.
Yeah, exactly. But again, that's also Sean Clifford's final game in Beaver Stadium. So I'm sure he'll want to make a statement. And, so are the other guys who are playing their final games there. So
yeah,
so a little, not too concerned, but I guess now that I think about it, maybe Michigan State might be the biggest remaining test but just seeing how Maryland played today, but we'll see. I will say maybe against Rutgers, you give Drew Hour his first career start. I don't think that'd be a bad game to do so. Just let Sean Clifford rest up and for his Beaver Stadium finale.
Yeah, I mean, right now I'm all for Drew Aller starting any game. So, I mean, the more Drew Aller, the better. And, that's not even just a slight at Sean Clifford or anything. It's, like I said, at this point, that's what's best for the long term health of this program, for the future of the program. So,
precise. And, we got to see a good glimpse of the future today. And hopefully these next 3 games will be the same way. Not much engagements in the comments this week, which is understandable. But Marty, you got any final thoughts? Anything on your mind you want to say?
no, I don't think so. Like I said, a lot of good from Penn State today. I mean, I get Indiana's not a good team. They've lost 6 in a row now, and honestly should have lost to Western Kentucky and only beat Illinois because the referees granted them an extra down. But yeah, it was James Franklin's track record the week after Ohio State hadn't been pretty, and they came out and just took care of business with a mass unit of an offensive line in poor weather conditions, and you never would have known it. They just stuck it to Indiana, and it was good to see. It was good to see that. Good to see a lot of the young players continuing to progress, and yeah, there's definitely a lot of reasons. Even though Penn State's not going to get to their goals of the Big Ten championship or college football playoff appearance, definitely a lot of reasons for excitement these last 3 weeks, and definitely still some things to be earned on the table for the Nittany Lions. I mean, we were talking about this in the Slack channel earlier. In my opinion, getting to 10-2 and getting to New Year's Six Bowl, still a big deal. It's big for program perception. It's big for program exposure. And maybe most of all, you can then on the recruiting trail point to recruits, say, look, 2020 was a fluke because of COVID. 2021, we were rolling until injuries. Look what happened this year when we didn't have these injuries. You can really write those 2 years off. And even in the transfer portal this offseason, you're going to need some help at a couple spots. If you can go into that coming off a 10-win, maybe an 11-win season, if you win the bowl game, and say, hey, look how close we were last year. We got a larger quarterback now. It makes all of that easier to do. So there's still definitely a lot of good that comes out of a 10 or 11-win season that culminates in going to and potentially winning a New Year's Six Bowl.
Absolutely. Plenty on the table still, despite the Big Ten championship and college football playoff being off no longer a thing. Once again, Tim Maiden, Marty Lee from blackstars.com. Check us out, for all your Penn State football coverage. Thanks for tuning in. Once again, you like what you see here, please like and subscribe us on the Penn State Voice of College Football channel. And we will catch you all next week after the Maryland game.